On the financial fellowship.
Nice.
I could be that person.
Me too.
Today we are interviewing Briana Nasman, business owner and real estate broker and investor. Briana started her investing career, as many do, with a house hack. From there, Briana purchased, managed, and eventually sold a wedding venue, purchased a clean and sober house, and built 2 homes in Suncadia, just to name a few of her endeavors. Most recently, Briana purchased a construction company, which we are going to take a deep dive into today, and the experience has been a nightmare, according to you.
Yes.
So we're going to dive right into it. Thanks for being here.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Super excited to be here.
So let's jump right in. I mean, I don't even know where to start. We were just talking before we pressed record. You have quite the resume.
Thank
Like
you.
you've done a lot of things.
Yes, I love to try new things.
So I would say let's start right back at the beginning. You said 2017 was when you bought your first house hack.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for that? Had you just graduated college? Like, talk to us about the beginning.
Sure, yeah. So I actually started college a little early. I did Running Start and then got my associate's degree. Was going to go into psychology. I was really interested in research psych. And then over winter break one year when I was working 3 jobs and in school full time, felt a little bored. So I decided to get my real estate license. And that was really the beginning of it all. I fell in love with real estate, started selling houses, got into investing, listened to a lot of Bigger Pockets. I got my first property with an FHA loan, house hacked that. It was a flip that I taught myself on YouTube how to remodel. Then rented out the rooms, and then I bought my clean and sober house.
So did you use a rehab loan?
Nope, just FHA. I think I put the materials on credit cards and
Got it.
Yeah, just did it myself.
So just
That's awesome.
good enough that it could be financed, but terrible besides that?
Yeah, no, it was a condo, so it wasn't bad.
Okay.
It was just hideous.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of your first jump into the contracting side of things, right? Was doing that.
Yeah, exactly. I was always kind of interested in DIY projects, but I had no idea how to do anything. So.
Did you run into any problems with like trying to update a condo with their rules and regulations?
I mean, sure. I didn't really listen to any of them, though. I think someone complained, and I just said, whatever. It never became a thing.
And you were saying that you're bad luck. I would say that you've had some
That's
pretty
true.
good luck, though.
I did get fined, but it was like $50, and I'm like, okay, sure.
Wow. That's like almost as bad of a fine as the new landlord-tenant laws. $10 late fee. It's like, okay. Oh my gosh, we're not going to get into that today. So you start by getting your first home. What was the next opportunity that you took
The next
advantage
one
of?
was the clean and sober house. My great grandma had left me some money for college, and I was able to, I dropped out of college, so used that to buy my clean and sober house with a commercial loan, and we also did seller financing, and then I had a business partner on it too, so made that happen. There was a really big rehab involved with that as well. That was also really terrible, and I really had no idea what I was doing, but it's worked out great. I still have it, and it's been a great property.
Can you elaborate, like, what is a clean and sober house?
Sure.
How did you find it? Was it listed, off market?
It was on the MLS. It was like a sideways picture. The only information in the entire thing was like $7,000 a month income, and that was about it. It didn't look like a real listing at all. But the seller was really averse to telling me anything about it, and I think he was just trying to hide what it was. And ultimately, I followed him for like 6 months trying to get this property under contract and like understand what it was. And then I ended up signing. He kept refusing to sign the Form 17, the seller disclosure statement. I ended up getting him to sign it over a game of blackjack at the casino.
No way.
Yeah, he wouldn't sign it until I met him up there for drinks and like played blackjack with him. It was kind of ridiculous.
Wait, did you like bet him on it?
No, I didn't bet him. I was like, you have to sign this before we can close, man. But then he ended up like, I don't know, I think he was in some nasty divorce and like ended up going to Mexico, and he kept sending me videos of his like Ferrari. It was like, okay.
Wow.
I think he was just kind of like always drunk.
That is so the life of a real estate broker,
Yeah.
though. Like we build relationships, and sometimes we like the relationships, and other times we pretend like we like the relationships.
Right. Just get the
Don't say that too loud.
I mean, anybody listening to this who's my client, you're one of the ones I like. But everybody,
Of course.
yeah, of course. That's hilarious. So yeah, I
goodness.
definitely have people who still like reach out to me with like, oh wow, that's borderline inappropriate.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's hilarious. So why a clean and sober house? Like, what
Yeah,
made
was
you,
there
like,
was there anything in the past that kind of, was it literally just the cash flow potential of it, or was there something that was more of like a heart project for you?
Yeah,
and what
it's
is a clean and sober
Oh
house
yeah,
for those
right.
who don't
That
know?
question. So clean and sober house is housing for people who are in recovery, essentially. So most of them have gone through some sort of program. A lot of them are either facing homelessness or in some sort of like homeless situation. And a lot of them are on various vouchers. There's a handful of programs that help support these sort of houses. They're also called transitional houses. That's another name for them. So yeah, it's a really needed form of housing. They're by the room rentals. One program that a lot of people are familiar, I shouldn't say a lot of people, some people are familiar with, is called Oxford House. We don't use that model, but we've looked at it before. So that's that. I can't remember your other question. I'm sorry.
Was there anything behind it, or did you just?
Oh, yeah,
it was
right.
it was purely a business play.
So psychology was kind of my passion at the time before I got into real estate, and I was really interested in like abnormal psychology, but also like how addiction happens and how brain chemistry works in ways that, you know, just doesn't always like make sense to people who are mentally healthy. So that was a really big passion of mine, and I saw a huge need for this type of housing, so I was interested in it for that purpose.
And how does someone like have a cash flow when these people are almost homeless?
Yeah.
And so how does all that work?
Great question. Because they're not paying cash. They're almost exclusively through various programs. So the part of the thing that also helps with the cash flow is because it's rented to a nonprofit. We don't actually have to pay property taxes on that house. So
I see.
that
Wow.
does help a lot. Yeah, and
That's
then
fantastic.
everyone has a voucher for the room. So we're making money on it, but you know, it's one of those things where there's a certain amount of work that goes into it, and knowledge that you have to have, and you know, you do have to get paid for that on some level. I mean, every nonprofit has profit, unfortunately.
So it's kind of like government housing for what's it called?
Like Section 8?
Section 8. It's kind of like Section 8
Yeah,
in the sense
similar
that
idea.
the government pays. So it's like a guaranteed check, but there's a lot of drama, stipulation, drama, etc.
Yeah, and I will say, it's been a really interesting experience with that house because I started off managing it myself, and I was pretty gullible, and it was easy to pull one over on me at the time. I was like 19 when I got the house.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was a lot to manage. But ultimately, I ended up hiring a house manager who lived there and was able to be a little bit more discerning with people. You know, requiring drug tests sometimes when needed, and being a little bit more selective about who was coming in. And the last few years, it's been running just absolutely seamlessly. We are really careful we'd rather take less income and have a little bit more selection in terms of people who are actually wanting to recover.
Now, I would think with a government program like that, though, you have to be careful with how selective you are because
Yes.
there's obviously you don't want to be accused of being selective for
Sure.
reasons that are protected classes.
Yeah, absolutely. And technically everyone there is struggling from a disability. Alcoholism and addiction is classified as a disability. So yeah, you do have to be careful, but it's not something that it's such a needed form of housing for so many people that there's not really that much oversight, to be perfectly honest. It doesn't get that many eyes. So yeah.
So why haven't you bought more if it's going so well?
I've looked. The biggest reason was the market kind of started increasing, and it really has to be something that's going to really pencil out to be worth the additional work. So when house prices just went through the roof, and it's also kind of hard to find like a 9-bedroom house or even a house that can be converted into a 9-bedroom house.
It has to be 9.
No, it can be anything, but you know, it's not going to pencil at 4 bedrooms.
Yeah.
The vouchers only go up to $600, and they haven't really raised them.
I see.
Yeah.
Got it. Wow, that's fascinating.
wild.
Have you ever done any research into that, Andrew?
No, I have not. I obviously know that they exist. I had some friends who were in a couple of them, like way back in the day. But yeah, I never thought about it as like a potential investment opportunity. And how cool that, you know, like you being interested in psychology, that you were kind of able to, you know, dip your toes in to that environment. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been a cool experience.
That's super cool. All right, well, we spent a lot of time on that one. That was just, that was personal, like, curiosity. That's fascinating. As someone who's obsessed with real estate investing, you know, have people who buy homes for elderly people and people who do room rentals and stuff. I haven't actually met somebody who does that, so thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it's not too common.
So was next a wedding venue?
Next was I had a baby, so that took up some time.
A little bit.
As it does sometimes.
I took a bit of a break from investing for about a year, about a year, I guess, and mostly stayed at home with her while she was very small. And then the next thing was the wedding venue. Yeah, so that was a really fun project. It was a 1901 Victorian. And it was just really underperforming. The sellers had lived there for 45 years and were, bringing $50,000 a year in or something. And I did a lot of research on it and realized it could be performing a lot better than that. It was also, kind of an old gross house. So I kind of revised their entire business plan, remodeled the house, while keeping like all the Victorian elements, but making it, I took out the green shag carpet that was upstairs. That was obviously not from that era. That sort of stuff. Remodeled the shower into something that wasn't like 90s style. And ended up being one of the only venues in the area that would do overnight rentals, just because I'd had a background in real estate and short-term rentals. I did some Airbnb for a bit too. And that worked out really well. I mean, people loved that concept that you could rent the venue for the whole weekend. No one else was doing that. And so I got, let's say, I bought it right before the pandemic. So about December of 2018, 19?
19, I think, right?
When was that? And then
BC, AC,
Yes.
before COVID, after
Exactly,
COVID.
exactly.
Dark hole.
Yeah, then 4 months later, I just remember we had like our open house party of like, I finally finished the remodels, and then like a week later, everything shut down. And I was like, wow, I'm glad no one died from my event. But
my gosh.
it was pretty crazy, and it was it was a tough time just because no one was booking events, first of all, and second of all, everyone was trying to get their money back from everything they'd booked because they couldn't have the event the way they wanted it to. So it was hard trying to balance, building a new business, customer service, and trying to stay afloat. We were too new of a LLC to qualify for any of the government programs that happened with COVID. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even think about that. Because
So
you didn't have any tax returns.
Right, I had no tax returns. I just bought the place. It was a startup, essentially.
Golly.
And I finally was able to get some in like December, but by that point we were already doing kind of okay. Things were looking up a little bit. People were more into the idea of having a smaller wedding or booking for further out in the future. And I was able to buy some awesome decorations with that money actually, and kind of have that as a value add to the event. So. That was an interesting time for sure.
So how did you find that one? How did you come across it?
The MLS as well, actually.
MLS as well?
Yeah,
No
that
kidding.
one was cool because it's kind of a fun deal. So it was listed for $640, I think. I got them to agree to $600, but to give me 3% back at closing plus another 3% back outside of closing. And so my it was an SBA loan. My down payment was mostly from a second loan on the halfway house, actually, the Clean and Sober house. And the rest of it was about $40K that I needed, and I borrowed it from my brother-in-law at the time, and I paid him back with the money that the seller paid me after closing, like 3 days later.
Wow.
Yeah.
You are a hustler.
Yeah.
Dude, I know. I love it. It's one of my favorite quotes. I'm going to butcher it. I think it is actually Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. I think they wanted to buy a property. It might be his second book, Cash Flow Quadrant, but they wanted to buy a property with woods and a stream, and they said we're only going to buy this if we can make it pay for itself. Like we're only going to do this if it's not. We know we want to do it, but how do we make it? How do we make the numbers work? And so a problem is just waiting for a solution. You found the solutions, and that's very exciting.
Yes.
My wife and I have always wanted, that's been our dream, to get a property that we live on, but is also a wedding venue. We can kind of separate it that way. And that's super. I mean, when I was reading your bio, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be such a selfish podcast. I'm going to ask all the questions I've been wanting to ask somebody who's done these things.
Yeah.
How did you, so it was an SBA loan and, I think, what was I going to ask? I was going to ask, was the property zone commercial? Did you have to use an SBA loan, or could you have used traditional financing because it was a single family home?
Technically, I probably could have maybe sneakily used conventional. The problem is if any appraiser, and this is what I ran into when I sold it, some people did try to use a conventional loan, but if you Google the property address, the first thing that comes up is Ording Manor Wedding Venue. So most of the appraisers said, this is a business, I'm not touching this.
Okay, got it. Interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. Because I would think that they would just use a comp approach as opposed to an income approach to value at that point.
That's the other thing is I think it was a very hard property to comp, and so
Fair.
it was much easier for them to just say like, I can't do this, than it was to go through the work of trying to comp a property that didn't have comps.
Okay. So then you sold that. Why did you sell it as opposed to keeping it if it was doing well?
Well, I discovered that though I love business and I love running a business, I want nothing to do with weddings. They are a lot of work. It is a very emotional time for a lot of people. And you have people with opinions on both sides of the family coming to you the day of the wedding with all these ideas that they have that you should apparently implement for free that day, even though you've never talked to this person before in your life. Like, okay. And people are upset about every little thing. And you know, I had some really cool couples, but the families were really the problem. The families were awful. So we had some great weddings. It was really fun. I learned a lot about business and kind of like pivoting during, you know, a global pandemic, which was really awful to be running an events business during. But I did not like weddings, and that probably impacted it too. Like running it through the pandemic was really hard. So I was very done after, you know, the end of year 2, I think, of wedding season. The icing on the cake was that my sewer line exploded, like in between 2 weddings.
No.
And,
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was like a $27,000 emergency sewer line replacement, like in peak wedding season. Like we had a wedding Sunday, we had a wedding Thursday, and I was like, I have 4 days, like
Get her
to
done.
replace this sewer line.
Wow.
I got
gosh.
a permit over the counter, like walked down to City Hall. I was like, hey, you guys, can you help me out? They're like, sure, $100, and signed it. That was kind of funny, but yeah, it was that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me.
Dealing with bridezillas and the families is a whole different level of customer service.
Dude,
Yeah,
totally.
100%.
It really is.
Imagine.
Yeah.
You bought it for $600. How much did you put into it? How much did you sell for?
It really maintained itself pretty well, despite everything. I mean, I think there was some government aid at the end, or not the end, but in December that helped a little bit, but it wasn't really that much. I didn't have PPP loans or anything like that. So I probably put in like 30,000 total. I can't remember exactly. It was like 15 when I bought it, and then a couple grand here and there throughout the process. But overall, it pretty much paid for itself as time went on. And then I sold it for $927, I think.
Boom.
Wow. Nice.
Let's go.
Decent piece of profit.
Yeah, it ended up being pretty nice.
That's killer. Jake, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a professional wedding DJ.
Are you really?
No, totally not. I started DJing
kinda.
weddings when I was like
He's done a lot of
18 or 17. Actually, the first wedding I ever DJ'd, he listens to our podcast, so shout out to Jordan White. But yeah, it was just I just had friends who were like, I mean, DJs are so expensive, even back then.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, I'll do it for $100 and a 6-pack, baby. Let's go.
At what age?
Well, yeah. So because of that, it was a great little side income, and I enjoyed it. I was gonna say that I found that bridezillas are rare.
Yeah.
There's been a few.
I had some groomzillas.
Okay, rare, but a few.
Yeah.
It's the momzillas.
Yep.
Both the and the groom.
Gosh, yeah.
Depends on who's paying.
Yep.
Golly.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so freaking cheap, and they'd come. I mean, it was wild. So I can totally relate to that.
Yes.
I no longer DJ wet. Well, I did like 3 this year. I've probably done over 100. It's
Oh my gosh,
So
wow.
You want to do one next year?
I do for friends. So I did like 3 or 4 this year, and they were just friends. So I'll still do it with friends because I actually love doing it for people I know.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the people who were paying me coming to me so entitled,
Yes.
and dude. It was crazy how the bride and groom would come to me ahead of time. We'd have these meetings. We'd talk about what kind of music they want. And then the mother of the bride or the mother of the groom would be like, why are we playing this music? And I would say, oh, well, because, the bride and groomers asked for this kind of music. And they're like, well, I don't want this. And I paid for this all the time.
I know.
It was
I know.
nuts. And I was like,
bet.
I don't really know what to do.
Right. You're not my client, but you're upset.
But you paid me.
Yes. It's
So-
very confusing.
It's very confusing.
it is
So that's
very
why I
confusing.
only do it with friends now.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Can't blame you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyways.
that'd be something I want to get out of real quick. So that
Right.
makes complete sense to me.
Thank you, next.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you rolled the profits into your next project, I'm assuming, the building homes in Suncadia?
I'm trying to remember exactly. I cannot exactly remember the sequence of events in terms of how that all panned out, but I think that's what happened. It was pretty expensive to build those houses. I bought the land for, again, I got the land for like almost nothing in terms of my cash involvement. But then, there's a lot of costs that go into building a home, especially in a luxury market like Suncadia. So I'm pretty sure I dumped most of that, if not all of that money into those houses.
So how did you decide on that? Like that's not. I mean, that's real
That's
estate.
an interesting pivot.
Different,
Yeah, but it is a pivot. Exactly. Building
Yeah.
homes is not necessarily the next step, or
That-
not even at all the next step. So where did that come from?
You know, that's a great question. I've always been someone, I'm not really, it's not like I'm looking for anything specific. It just like appears, and it's something that's been overlooked by other people. The Clean and Sober House, for example, the wedding venue was on the market for 6 months. And then these lots. I think I've always been interested in building, and I was just kind of browsing Zillow one day, and I noticed in this particular bubble of Central Washington that the houses were selling for, 2 or 3 times what they were outside of this little bubble, which was, Cleveland versus Suncadia proper. And I started just looking into it a little bit and thought, I'm gonna drive up there and play buyer and just kind of scope it out and like see what's the deal up there. So I did that and was looking around, and most of the lots were, I think, around 300 to 400,000 at the time. I'm like, okay, well, this might.
The lots?
Yep, the lots.
Ooh,
Yeah.
When was this?
Oh gosh,
was-
right before the huge building boom. I got it at a really good time with those houses. So it was like right before like lumber prices like quadrupled. I don't know what year that was. Come on, guys.
2021.
Well, then you probably did this while you still had the wedding venues.
I might have then. Yeah, it was definitely during the pandemic, but not immediately. I bought the lots before I sold the wedding venue for sure.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, I
guess.
used them because it took about 8 months before we broke ground on
Got
those
it.
lots. So I bought the lots, but I bought them for about $8,000. I mean, cash. So,
How?
so okay, so this one's even more wild. Got up there, played buyer, looked around. I found that there was 2 signs still available on this one side of the development that had already been mostly built. And it said that they were for sale, so I was asking the agent about those 2 lots, and he's like, "Oh no, we've already sold out that whole side of the development, blah blah." And I'm like, "Well, can you just check? Like, they still say for sale."
Check again.
I know. And he was, probably rolled his eyes and called the office and asked, and lo and behold, they were still for sale. And because everyone had thought they were sold, they had been sitting for a while, and the developer
my
was quite
gosh.
anxious to get them.
Oh my
off.
gosh.
Yeah. Right. So I made them an offer for, I can't remember how much they were listed for. I want to say they were listed for $240 each, and I made them an offer for $400 for both of them, and they accepted. So I think I maybe offered $180 each, and then they countered with $200, and I accepted that. So got that. I ended up getting a how did I get this loan? It was really, really wild. So Flynn Family Lending helped me out with this one. I want to say they loaned me 60% of the lot value, which at the time the lot value was more like $300, so I walked in with that equity. And then they actually put a third lien position on my Clean and Sober House for the remainder of the balance.
Talk about leverage. Holy smokes.
Yeah. So then I put in, I think it was $8,000, maybe $12,000 for the earnest money on those lots, and at least had them locked up, closed on them, and then was able to start going through like permitting and design work and all that stuff, which takes a really long time up there, and then sold the wedding venue in the meantime.
That is so rad. I mean, again, you're just like not taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
You're like, no, I'm going to buy this. How about you put a lien on my other property, my other business? And that's where most people
No is
stop.
not an answer. Just
Right.
tell me how we're going to do this, and let's figure it out.
That's what it is. It's not can I do this? It's how do I do this? And
Yeah.
that's the main differentiator there. Is not can I? It's how.
I
That's
love
incredible.
that. That is so like motivating to me and encouraging. I mean, we're going through a time where a lot of people listening to this, whether they're a business owner, they're wanting to become a business owner, they're a real estate broker, an entrepreneur, things are rough right now.
Yeah.
And they're considering throwing in a towel because frankly, that seems easier, right?
Oh, for sure.
It's so much easier to just
Go get
say,
a W-2
whatever,
job and-
I'm going to go get a job at
Yep.
wherever,
Yep.
Costco.
Mm-hmm.
But like, have you really exhausted all your options?
Well, yeah, and that's a values thing. It's like for some people, it's not the worst thing in the world to have a W-2 job. For a lot of people, and that's
Of course, yeah.
There's stability, there's consistent income, there's a lot of major positives with having a job, and I especially say that now, having really never been truly employed, and having gone through a lot of craziness. Like, there's a lot of benefit to having a job that I don't think it should be overlooked or like pushed for. Like, everyone should be an entrepreneur because I mean personally, there's no other option for me because I love it, but it's for a lot of people that's great. That's a great option.
Yeah.
Totally agree with
Yeah,
that.
and like zero shame there. Like we need people, like we need a lot of people who want to work a job, because otherwise there's nothing. There's no economy. So I don't remember where I was going with this tangent, but something important probably.
I think every business owner and entrepreneur thinks that way multiple times a year, if not multiple times a month. Like, maybe I should get a job. You know what I mean? Actually, just for fun, so at the end of the podcast, we asked the same 4 questions, and I had a question that I didn't end up being my question, but I'm going to ask it to you now, just for fun.
Okay, sure.
As a serial entrepreneur, business owner,
Yeah.
if you had to quit being a business owner, entrepreneur forever,
Okay.
and you get a 9-to-5 job, 40 hours a week, but let's say well benefited, you get your vacation time, all that, but you can't be a business owner again. You have to just do this until you decide that you want to retire. How much money would you have to be paid per month?
And you don't hate the job.
Yeah, that's the
but
key.
it's not your dream
But
job.
it's not my dream.
No, it's not something that like completely fills your cup, but it's not like you go home every Friday and you drink yourself to death. That was really dramatic.
That's-
Wow.
yeah,
I just
no,
said something
I
really
understand.
dramatic.
I
I was trying to say you don't hate it.
I got you. I mean, the first number that popped into my head, and I probably, it really would depend on the job and how much I liked the job, because that matters to me more than money. But the first number that popped in my head is $1 million a year.
Damn.
I love what I do, and despite all this insanity, like I really do. So,
That is a gangster number. I'm gonna ask this question often, I feel like, and I'm gonna keep track of who has the highest number. You are so far in first place.
okay,
Yeah,
maybe
yours
that's
was
dramatic.
even
That was
higher
just the
than
first
Yeah, Jake's
number
was
that popped in my
30.
head.
50,000 a month, so 600,000.
Well, you started at 30 and
Yeah,
then you
my
said, actually it's
revised.
50. You changed your mind.
I mean, I'd do it for, I could do that for like a year, and then, but I can't do it for the rest of my life. Oh, yeah, that's tough.
The thing is, you love what you do, but I think what's even more obvious, like, you're really good at it.
Yeah.
And that is,
Well, wait till you hear the rest of my story.
Oh.
You know it, Jake, but
and I
granted-
say that knowing it.
yeah,
right?
okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I think that question, the reason I like that question, not to pat myself on the back at all with a good question, the reason I like that question is because a lot of times I feel like people will listen to this podcast, any episode, and be like, F that. I don't want that shit. I'm not going to go through that.
Yeah.
And despite the hurdles that you've gone through, and I mean, we're going to talk about way worse, it sounds like, you still would need $1 million a year to stop doing what you're doing.
To never be in business for myself again, to have to go clock into someone else's company 8 hours a day and do the commute and not have any control over that, no. That just sounds horrible.
Well, it sounds like maybe there's a little piece of that too that's just like you like problems, figuring
do.
out how to solve them.
I do, yeah.
And having that, like, it's funny enough, I was actually just having lunch with a buddy yesterday, and he was like, yeah, man, I just go to work, I do my work, and I clock off and I go home. And there was a small part of me inside, I was like, wow, that sounds kind of nice. You literally, you don't have to be working on this all of the time. You don't have all the stresses, all the fires.
Constantly going through your brain, yeah.
But there's some crazy psychopaths
Oh, yeah.
who just really enjoy having a consistent, like, yeah, I would be happy with that for a month.
Right.
And then after
like
that, I'd be
a
like,
nice
God,
vacation
I
or
need, yeah, exactly. I need something that is going to be a little more challenging than just going and building someone else's business. So, I don't know. I feel like that's just a piece, you know?
Yeah.
I always say I wish I could be that person.
Me too.
No, dude,
honestly.
I
yeah.
truly wish I could be okay
Yeah.
with it, because it seems like a better balance to life.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of us are really built that way.
No.
Because if I
definitely not.
was, I would do it. in a
Yeah.
heartbeat.
Yeah. If you can go make,
Fix and chill on the weekends,
Oh.
in the nighttime.
I still do. That's
Drink
the
a
thing.
beer.
Like, you have to prioritize that stuff.
Yeah.
And there's been plenty of times in my life when I've worked 80 plus hours a week and just been constantly busting ass and had no life outside of working. But I create time now because it's extremely important to me, and I don't beat myself up for being lazy. If I have a lazy day or I want to watch Netflix all day once in a while, fine, I do that.
Yeah.
But I make sure that when I am productive, that the production I'm creating is actually valuable and not just busy work.
Yeah, and like I'm going through a time in my real estate business where for the first time in my career, my business isn't going just straight up. Like
Yeah.
ever since I got in the business,
Yeah.
part of this is just natural progression. Your network grows, you get more buyers, and they eventually sell, and so on. My business
Yeah.
goes up and up and up, and now it's like, okay, it's plateaued a little bit, and in the past few years, I remember thinking like, man, I need a vacation. And now it's like, I have more time and I'm like, man, I just want to be so busy. I can't,
so bored.
I can't plan anything. Like I'm like craving that stress almost.
Yeah,
the chaos is
it.
like
It's
addictive.
It
Exactly.
Yeah.
I noticed that when I watched like the Michael Jordan documentary or read Elon Musk, the book about Elon Musk, like there are certain types of people who they don't want to be good. They want to be the greatest. Like they want to be the best. And that doesn't always mean the best. Like with Michael Jordan, he wanted to be the best basketball player ever. Elon Musk wants to be, I don't know, I'm putting words in his mouth, but like one of the greatest innovators ever, right? I don't necessarily want to be the greatest real estate agent ever, but I want to be the greatest I can be.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm obsessed with that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you are too. You know your potential and you're obsessed with maxing out your potential.
Yes.
And if you don't hit your potential, if you're like, hey, I'm comfortable, I'm making $30,000 a month, that's not good enough because you know you're capable of more. And I think that is a fascinating commonality that we've seen with people we've been interviewing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
I love it. So how do you feel like your real estate investing like kind of helps play a part in acquisitions?
My real estate investing plays a part in acquisitions.
Like business
Yeah, like purchasing
Okay.
businesses.
Yeah,
How do you feel like that that has helped you in the way?
That's a good question. I don't know if I entirely have an answer to that. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head though with the problem solving thing. For me, it's not really a dollar figure or money thing. It's like, can I turn this thing that is underperforming or this problem into something that's amazing? Can I bring this thing to its full potential? And what does that look like? And how do I do it? So I really enjoy that challenge, and I think that translates really well from real estate, like any sort of real estate investing, really, to business acquisition.
Now, are you a visionary?
Yes.
Yeah, through and through.
No hesitation.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I've had to also do all the implementation or integration. No, I've had to do a lot of that, and I've gotten okay at it because I've had to. I haven't really ever had a person who's been like my right hand person until very recently. Who can do the things that I dream up. So I've had to do both. But yeah, if I can spend all day dreaming about stuff and hand it to someone else, that's my preferred way to do it.
Love it. So maybe we can jump into the fun stuff. So the current bane of your existence, or maybe as you put it, like your fight currently is you purchased a contracting company.
Yes.
Well, tell us what the contracting company is called and then how you ended up acquiring the company.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm still in an active lawsuit, so I have to be a little bit careful about how much I say. But I'll say that I bought a company, and that was with the proceeds of one of the houses I sold in Suncadia. And it looked great on paper. Everything checked out. The numbers checked out. The P&Ls checked out. My attorney reviewed it. My CPA reviewed it. I did all the things I thought I was supposed to do. And then in the purchase agreement, we had agreed basically that he had pre-booked all this work, and it was like the deposits were like $700,000 and then given a little change or something like that. Granted, I was only about $500 was disclosed because a bunch of people didn't have contracts.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So like handshake. Yeah, you're hired.
They gave him a check for $40,000.
Oh,
and
Lord.
had no contract. And they're like, oh, I thought the estimate was a contract. No, it's not. It's not a contract. But they gave him a check. So I had knowledge of about $527,000 in deposits that we talked about, and he had showed me how he had paid for all these materials for these jobs. And then he put an admin fee on top of it, and I'm like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. He booked the job. Of course, he can, take a fee from the deposit, which was 10%, and I was fine with that. And then the balance was basically had been bought with materials, because this was considered a materials deposit. That's what all the clients thought they were giving him money for, was to purchase the materials for their job, which was a little silly because a lot of these jobs are like 6 months from starting. So, it's whatever. Buyer beware. Oh God, poor guys. It was a lot of older people, unfortunately. So that's what we agreed on, and then it ended up being, I think the balance was like $180,000 that'd go towards me after the materials and the admin fee. And I gave him some commissions for apparently almost booking jobs that were going to book that none of them ended up actually booking. So that was a little silly, but, and then there was some more money that he was charging for, quote, stock inventory, which was actually just a warehouse full of junk that was like leftovers from jobs and stuff. It looked like real stuff, but it wasn't. It was just misordered and etc. So at the end of it, I'm expecting 180,000. The contract says, your deposits are going to be within 5 days of closing, blah, blah, blah. We have an attorney handling the sale, so I'm feeling good about everything. One really, really dumb mistake I made was it is not uncommon in a business sale to not be able to meet the employees or talk to the employees until, right before closing or after closing. That's not a huge red flag in and of itself, but I was a little bit too above the board, is that the right terminology? And I should have secret shopped a little bit, maybe called an employee and just kind of tested the waters or insisted on talking to someone the day before closing or something. I did not do that. And so we closed, and, I'm like, okay, let's start looking through the stuff. And I'm like, well, okay, where's my deposits? It's been a week. Like, where are they at? And so he ended up coming in. He was supposed to give me like 60 hours of training or something and kind of just fled the state instead. But whatever. He came in, and I'm like, hey, we had these material sheets all done and everything, and I've been looking through it. And the person who does material ordering says we don't have any of these paid for yet. I had asked him for receipts, by the way. He gave me purchase orders that looked like they'd been paid for, but had not actually been paid for. So it wasn't for everything. I asked for like a sampling of receipts to make sure that we were good, and I got the purchase orders. So really looked like receipts, but they're not. So I'm talking to the person who does materials, and she's like, none of this has been paid for. Like, all of this is wrong. Like, this is not right. I call him up, and I'm like, hey, this has been pointed out, and none of this stuff's been paid for. What's going on here? And he kind of makes some blustery excuse. And he's like, I need to look into it. I have to go. I'll be back. I'm like, okay, cool, no problem. At this point, I'm still not very suspicious yet because I'm kind of dumb. Everyone else is like, I got this expression like, oh my God. So, okay, no problem. So then later that day, he's like, hey, I'm going to look into this stuff. I'll get back to you. I think it's later that day or the next day or something. And I'm still like, everything's totally great, He says, hey, I want to give you my phone number because I have a lot of contacts on this phone number. So I want to like officially give it to you. I'm like, okay, sounds great. So he does that, and then I'm like, just make sure you reach out to give me your new phone number for training after. And doesn't do that, of course. And now I'm like, it's been a few days. I'm like, I haven't heard from him on the materials, and I don't have his phone number anymore. Like, okay. Well, that's a little weird.
Oh, man. Oh, jeez.
And the dumbest thing, too, is everyone who worked there was like, they kept making shifty eyes, and they're kind of like very gently trying to let me know that I'm fucked. But sorry.
Did you ever corner someone and be like, yo, what is going on?
Oh, yeah, that all came out. But, I spent like a good few weeks at least in like this bubble of oblivion of like, everything's totally fine. What do you mean? Like, this is great. It starts coming out. Okay, the deposits aren't there. I'm like, okay, what the heck? He disappears. The training's not there. I'm like, okay, this is weird. Granted, it was very apparent that he didn't actually know what was going on in his company, like, at all. So I wasn't too worried about the training at the time, but it would have helped to have him around for, legal purposes, but whatever. So I start to get more information from the finance manager and the material person, and his son was actually working in the company too, and was supposed to stay on for a couple weeks to help with the transition, and disappeared after like day 3 or 4. I can't remember. He like left. This was when it was all starting to unravel. He left for lunch and didn't return, and I was like,
got a phone call from dad and disappeared.
Yeah, something like that. And then I had an employee say, oh, hey, by the way, he picked up a bunch of boxes. I'm like, what do you mean he picked up a bunch of boxes? Oh, he called me at 4 a.m. and said, can you, the lock's been changed. Can you open the door for me? I'm like, he called you at 4 a.m.? Yeah, well, yeah, so I didn't know what to do, so I opened the door for him. I was going to be at work at 5 anyway. I'm like, oh, what was in those boxes? So just stuff like that, and it kind of eventually, not that long after a couple of weeks, became pretty obvious that there was a lot going on that had been not disclosed. So I hired, his project manager had zero clue about construction, like just the most ludicrous stuff. Like he had taken out a structural beam from someone's ceiling that was not supposed to be removed, and like their drywall was already like collapsing like after a few weeks of this, or months. I'm not entirely sure when it happened. Like
the project was finished and then they're having problems?
Yeah, like they call us back because like I don't think it was like in punch list. He sold me a lot of jobs in punch list. Like, it's just a couple things and you're gonna collect the final check. Oh, it's not a couple things.
Yeah, 30% of the way done.
Gosh.
Yeah, he had done a lot of overbilling. So, like, the final punch list check I was supposed to collect was, like, 5% of the total project. And we had to take a bunch of work apart and rebuild it together. And, the structural thing was one thing. We had, like, commercial grade gas ranges, like 6 and 8 burner ranges that were either not vented at all, or, like, there was a microwave 14 inches above them, or they were venting into the attic. Like, just... you can't do, like, that someone's gonna die. Like, you can't do that. So there's a good handful of jobs that we just had to redo a lot of it.
How long were they in business before you purchased?
I think he'd been in business for a while, but it seemed like, based on the statements, that he had been kind of operating at a smaller scale, and I think things probably went reasonably okay for a while, until he started trying to scale up a lot and increase the revenue for sale purposes, is my guess. And then I think I think it was a ticking bomb, and he knew that, and handed it to me right before it exploded. I had the project manager I ended up bringing on after I fired his told me, this is a mess ship, like, you just need a bail. And I was like, no, we're not going to do that. I have this huge loan and blah blah blah, I'm not going to give up. Probably should have, but I didn't.
I feel like there's so much to unpack here.
Oh yeah,
I know.
I don't even know where to start though.
Well, I
Well,
feel
how'd you
like
find
you
the
should
deal?
start. Yeah.
Like,
bizbuysell.com.
okay. So that's not a listed service, right? That's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
oh, for some reason I thought that was like a FSBO type service.
No, there's a broker.
So you had a broker.
Yeah, I don't know what the broker's knowledge of the actual situation was. I really don't know.
Do you know what the broker's liability is?
I have no idea. My attorney hasn't brought it up, so I'm gonna guess. He was working with the information he had. Like,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
really under any obligation to
Yeah.
investigate the business that he's selling.
Just a quick pause. We don't have to pause the recording. By the way, we can send you this recording, and if your attorney wants to cut anything out, we can do that.
Okay,
Just so you know.
sweet.
So that way you feel comfortable talking, we can cut anything out.
Okay,
So
sounds good.
That way
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
The brokers, I mean, they really know about liability.
Yeah, I figured.
I mean,
Really?
They're just going off.
Well, I mean, wouldn't that kind of be like
Yeah.
us selling a house and then them finding out 6 months later that there's mold in the walls? Like, I mean,
Exactly.
we
You have
would
no-
have no liability
You
there.
have no reason to investigate that.
Yeah.
And if you do, you have insurance.
Well, yeah. So I guess our liability is we are required to disclose
There
any
could be-
material defects
sure,
that we
sure, that
know
you know
about.
of, yeah.
So if he has plausible deniability,
Yeah.
he is
Yeah, and
not
I
liable.
don't think he'd have any reason to know these things, So, yeah, that's the biggest thing. One of the other things one of the employees I still have, one of the few I still have, is she's actually amazing, and he hired her a couple months before closing. He told me he hired her for customer service, but because they were so busy they couldn't handle all their lead calls. But what it really was is he hired her to go after people who hadn't paid or who were supposed to be putting a deposit or said they were going to book and didn't.
I bet she loved that job.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, she's awesome. She just really jumps in and does whatever. But no, it wasn't. I mean, that was literally what she was hired for. Is to collect payments and try to get more payments than what was really owed on. I mean, she didn't know anything about construction, so it wasn't like she was like, oh, I know your job isn't this far along, but I'm going to collect the payment anyway. It was like she was just doing what she was told. But yeah, so that's a little bit funny. It's like, oh, customer service, You're just trying to get every dime out of this first.
Wow.
So you found it on Biz Buy Sell.
Mm-hmm.
What was the purchase price and how much? What was the seller discretionary earnings?
Gosh, let's see here. I think I bought it for about 2.2 or 3, I think. And he said he was making about $1 million a year, and the P&Ls backed that up. I mean, it looked really like a really solid deal.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you bought it with the SBA loan?
Mm-hmm.
So from my experience, and I've never actually gotten an SBA loan, and I would like to hear kind of the compare and contrast of the SBA loan you got for this and the wedding venue.
Mm-hmm.
But the preconceived notion is if SBA approves it, they do a lot of due diligence.
Yes, they do. They require a lot of financial documentation. However, one important thing to note about purchasing a business is financial documentation doesn't always tell the full story. For example, a week after I bought it, I found out that there was a tax warrant for $340,000. A company that's making $1 million a year in profit isn't going to be over $250,000 in tax debt. So, but he was reporting that income. Like that was what was, showing. That
Wait, why wouldn't that show up in, like,
I didn't
isn't that a
purchase
lien?
the LLC. I purchased the assets. So there's a difference between a stock sale and an asset sale.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So that wasn't something that was necessarily mandatory for me to know because I wasn't buying any debt.
In hindsight, you would look up the LLC.
Oh yeah, I would have put in more effort because he seemed like such a trustworthy guy, and he seemed like he was being really transparent about everything, and he provided all this financial documentation. I didn't have a reason to not trust him.
Well, and you had lawyers look it over and
I
CPAs
did.
look it
I had a
over. I
CPA
mean,
over,
that's
yeah,
the whole
SBA
that's the whole
loan, the
reason you do
thing.
that.
Right, exactly. And so you feel like you have this additional layer of protection. When you look at the numbers, and the numbers all say something awesome, and then you find out that, like, well, you can make the numbers tell a story if you want them to. That doesn't necessarily tell you the whole story. A lot of this is also a really important distinguisher, I think, is a lot of the
So
profit he was
insane.
reporting was in deposits that he hadn't paid for any materials yet. So he's, collecting $1 million a year in deposits, and 30, his material deposits, so the 35% of the project, and most of that should be going towards purchasing materials for those jobs, but it wasn't. He was just reporting it as profit.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm probably skipping ahead, but what would you do if you could go back in time, besides the answer of not buy it?
Yeah.
Like, what would you do
Yeah, of course.
to audit
Avoid
this
this
better and
situation,
avoid the
yes.
situation?
The main thing I would have done, I think the biggest the one thing that would have made a huge difference is if I had talked to an employee first. I could have talked to anyone in the office, and they would have told me, "Don't buy this."
So what are the rules about that? Like, is it frowned upon that you can't speak to an employee, or are you not allowed to? Like, how does that work?
Oh, you can go ahead if you want.
It depends on the seller, really. It depends on if it's listed. Usually, if it's listed, most time you don't get a chance to talk to employees unless you negotiate it into the contract. But the seller, if I'm going to sell business, probably not going to allow the buyer to talk to employees.
And why would you not do that?
Because you got to think of it from the employee's perspective. If they're not happy with their job for some reason or another, they could give a really swayed opinion of you as a person.
I see.
That could destroy the whole deal, right?
Sure.
But if you're buying something off market without a broker, it's very normal to just negotiate that into the kind of the flow of the transaction. And
Are you doing that, Jake? Because you're actively buying businesses.
Yeah, so I haven't bought anything that we haven't talked to an employee first. But I've also never bought a business that has been listed. They've all been off market.
Okay, got it.
Right now, I have 2 LOIs out that have been accepted for ones that one is listed and one is not listed. But we're going to say, hey, to move forward, we have to talk to, and this is one of the reasons why this is her story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess like not the same thing at all, but relatively similar. If I got an offer on a listing of mine and the buyer in the offer, we had a Form 34 that said buyer wants to meet with the seller one-on-one.
Yeah,
I'd be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah,
I'd be like, this
exactly.
is weird. So
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, it's different because
Yeah,
they're not buying a
yeah.
business,
But
but
similar.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, no. Now I'm going to contradict myself. When you buy a multifamily property, you have the tenants fill out a
Right.
affidavit memorandum.
Yeah.
It's something like that.
One of the same.
Get 'em- What was that?
Estoppel,
Estoppel.
yeah.
That's it. It's an estoppel. I was wrong on both. Thank you. An estoppel, and the estoppel is saying, yes, my rent is $1,200. It's not $800. Confirming everything that the landlord is saying. So you'd almost think that an estoppel type agreement, where even just the employees confirming, yes, my salary is $50,000 a year, not
Right.
$80,000
Yeah.
a year, which I guess you would see more in the numbers.
That's
But
in QuickBooks, but yes, exactly. I see your point. And that's why it didn't really tip me off as a huge red flag. But in retrospect, like I would not purchase another business without talking to at least some employee. In this case, it would have been really easy to talk to the person in charge of money because she ended up knowing the sale was going on. And I mean, he didn't want me to talk to her because she would have told me immediately, like, run away from everything here. But his excuse for why I couldn't talk to the employees was everyone really liked him, and he was afraid that if they found out before the sale happened, they'd go look for another job. So no, that wasn't true at all. He promised all of them raises.
no way.
Yeah, so I buy the thing, and they're all, hey, we're told we're gonna get a raise this month. I'm like, what? Oh, okay, that's cool. I was like, hoping to give everyone a raise because like that's a cool thing to do as a new business owner, but sure wasn't expected to be expected to do it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like your story would make, I'd say 7 or 8 out of 10 people like
Never want to buy a business.
Throwing the towel.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
Yeah.
where's that W-2 job?
Yeah,
we were talking
exactly.
about?
Go back and be an exec at Starbucks. Like, this is ridiculous.
Your stomach can.
Oh yeah, my stress tolerance is inhuman at this point. And that is something to be considered for sure. I'm not going to say that there wasn't things I could do to get out of this situation. And I think the number one thing there was really just be a little bit more, or a little less trusting. I think that was my main thing is he told me something and I didn't really have a reason to not believe it. So I did believe it, you know? And technically in Washington, that's allowed legally. You're allowed to believe what you're told when you buy a business. So at least that's on my side. But still, you know, I could have, you know, talked to an employee would have been my number one thing. And I should have called vendors too and you know, confirmed things were paid for. I think those are the two things I really could have done.
Yeah, that's a good
verify
idea.
that he wasn't lying. But, you know, again, it's like you don't assume someone's lying to you.
Yeah, and that's kind of, both of those are, I mean, kind of like you just don't know until you have to know.
Yeah.
You know, that's the unfortunate part of this.
Well, and that's the awesome thing for people listening right now. Like for those 7 to 8 out of 10 people that you're referring to, Jake, you can be less afraid of that now because you have this in your arsenal now. Like
Right.
you can take this.
You got those
this
tools in
knowledge.
the tool belt.
Yeah, I mean, Jake has been inspiring Andrew and I to you know, look past real estate investing, not gloss over real estate investing, but also look at business acquisitions. I've been struggling with that word.
Business accusations all
I had
day.
to, like,
All the
pause.
accusations.
Acquisition. Okay. Anyways, and this doesn't actually, for me personally, this doesn't make me go, screw that, I'm not going to do it. It makes me go, okay, I need
Feel
to
a little
re-listen
better.
to this,
Yes.
write some notes,
Take
and
notes,
continue to
yeah.
formulate my game plan. And now everybody listening to this is way better off than you were
Yes.
2 years ago or whenever it was that you bought
Yeah.
this business, which is
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the beauty of the internet and podcasts and,
Yeah.
and all this free information. So thank you again for, you know, being so candid with all this. This is super helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah,
Good.
super helpful, and especially being a woman that bought a construction company
Yeah.
coming in, like that's a pretty badass thing because it's not
Thank you.
common.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so super props on that. One thing I would keep in mind with, like, if you're thinking about buying a business especially of this this magnitude, this purchase price, that I would probably almost always want to attach some type of seller note to it, even if I'm using an SBA loan or if I'm private money or cash, whether it's 10%, 30%, 50%, whatever it is, because then the seller has some type of skin in the game.
Yes.
You can't really do earnouts with SBA loans, but you can do essentially a reverse earnout and with SBA and make it beneficial for the seller to stay, for that
Involved,
transition
yeah,
period.
yeah.
Like there's milestones to hit, or there's revenue to hit to make sure you're going to get that extra $500,000 at the end of the day.
That's a great point. And I did have a bit of seller financing, but he really argued to not have it. The bank required it, but they allowed him. They allowed an exception, and that exception was he was supposed to put in, I think, 10% seller financing, and they let him do 5% because the profit looked so good. And he really argued to do none, and of course he knew he wasn't going to be getting it, so that's why. But yeah, I mean, I think having a more staggered purchase price approach that really puts some effort on the seller to be around and to be accountable, absolutely is a great idea.
So if someone takes that piece of advice and they're sitting across and they're wheeling and dealing, and the seller says absolutely not, or unless the bank says like you have to, would that be a big red flag in your head? Would you be like, we should maybe do a little more digging here because this is...
It would be to me, especially because one of the questions we always ask the seller is, what's your plan after this, right? Unless they had something that they needed a giant, pile of cash for, and then they're not willing to put a note on it of some sort, that's a big red flag for me because, one, it means you're not confident you're going to get the money. Two, you're not confident the business is what
you say it is. Yeah.
So whenever somebody's open to seller financing, I'm like, okay, I can relax a little bit because I have more confidence in the deal. In the SBA, honestly, 90% of small businesses that sell that are listed have some form of seller financing, and we're not talking about 90%. It's usually like 10 to 25%. It's usually pretty small. But the SBA requires it on a lot of loans because of this.
For this exact reason, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
But if you get $2 million and you have a loan out for $100,000, you're not as worried about it, you know.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why the SBA requires it.
Yeah, skin in the game.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't. That's something new I learned.
That's smart.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes a ton of
It
sense.
does.
So this is actually one of Jake's questions. I'm going to steal it from you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Knowing what you know now, would you purchase the business?
This one?
This one specifically. Would you walk away,
Oh, no.
or would you have purchased
Oh,
the business
no.
again?
Yeah, I would have. You know, if I knew what I was buying, I maybe would have spent like $100,000 or something. But really, it was such a project. It was such a huge turnover that I can't imagine I would have taken it for free.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
So knowing what you know now, though, you would purchase another business, right?
I would. I'd be a lot more discerning about what I was looking at. But I'm not necessarily afraid of buying another business. I'm just afraid of trusting too much. And I shouldn't say I'm afraid of that, because I think I've learned my lesson pretty well here. And I don't really anticipate a scenario in which we're this gullible again. But yeah, I'd buy another business.
Oh, you're gonna be able to sniff so many things out.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Now, like, I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier, but like, I feel like the deals that I'm going through, I'm like, hey, Briana, will you get on this call with me and just see if any red flags pop up? Like, from these,
Yeah.
because you've been
Yeah,
burned.
yeah. And one of the main things there that I really have learned in this last year and a half too, not to interrupt, but gut feelings. That's huge. That's
Yeah.
one thing I ignored partially because I'm a woman in this business, and you always hear, oh, women are so emotional and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm super logical. So I only look at the numbers. Well, if I let myself be a little more emotional about this, I would have caught on to that gut feeling a little faster about, hey, something's off here. This guy's there's a little too much selling going on with when he's telling me things.
That is really amazing, and I feel like everyone should hear this. There's always that moment you first meet someone. Maybe it's in the first 30 seconds, maybe it's in the first 5
Listen
minutes,
to
where
it.
something in your stomach just goes,
No.
and they're like, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's just
You
maybe
find
ridiculous.
yourself using logic to justify a feeling.
Yeah,
you're on the
and
wrong
maybe
track.
it's because it's something you want, and so
Yep.
I'm gonna overlook it.
Exactly.
Or maybe it's because, like you said, you're going into an industry and you're like, I don't want to deal with that. Or
Yep.
just logical.
Yeah.
But like, man, seriously, that has saved me a lot. And there was times when I did get screwed over, and I knew. Like, if going back, I
Yeah,
knew
me
the
too.
first conversation we had,
Yeah.
and I just didn't listen. So I think that is so
huge,
important.
yeah,
So
yeah.
important.
For sure. And I want to know where the business is at today.
Sure.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But before we get to that, can you tell me, and part of the reason why I really like the small businesses transitioning from real estate is, to me, it's way more fulfilling because we change people's lives as business owners and as bosses. And from your experience in real estate investing, and then now owning a business with several employees, can you kind of compare the fulfillment you get from one versus the other?
That's a really good question. I think all of my real estate investments on some level have been not really, quote, normal. And so I've always gotten a lot of fulfillment from anything I've done, because that is where I find it, is in the problem solving and the creation. If I were, buying normal, say, burrs or something, where I was just buying property to rehab it and keep it as a rental, I don't think I'd find any fulfillment in that. I mean, obviously I looked at a lot of those, and I was trying to convince myself to do that for a long time, because that seemed like a really safe route. And it didn't speak to me at all. It was really hard to justify putting money into that, because I didn't want to. It didn't sound fun.
Yep. I totally agree. But when you can give people raises, you can give people bonuses, you can
Collaborate.
pay for somebody's to be out for a month when their husband passes away, and it's just like you get to do these acts of kindness that there's no benefit to it, but
Right.
giving feels so good.
And you build the connections with your employees and people too that are really rewarding, and I think there's a lot there that you're not going to get in real estate for sure.
Awesome.
Before we wrap things up, I want to go back to the gut conversation that we were having, like trust your gut, because I struggle with this sometimes. How do you know when it's your gut giving you good advice and when it's your gut being a bitch? Because I struggle with that often. Like I think there's a lot of people right now who they might say, well, my gut, like let's talk to real estate agents.
Sure.
Real estate agents who are like, I have a closing in 3 months. My gut is saying I got to go get a job. And that might be right. I'm not telling, because you know your finances. I'm not necessarily talking to you, whoever you are. How do you know if that's your gut being prudent and wise, or if I can't think of a better word, you're just being a bitch?
Yeah, separate the fear. It's always the fear. You have to, I don't want to say that your gut is a feeling necessarily, because you can have feelings that aren't your gut feeling, whatever you want to call it, intuition. That's like, it's almost a separate entity from that. And so if you think about when you have a feeling like, oh, I need to go get a job, reflect on that. What is your body doing like in that moment? Is your heart racing? Are you getting sweaty? Are you feeling like panicky thoughts? Like that's not your gut feeling. That is fear. So you have
that's
to
your
learn,
nervous system reacting
that's
to
your nervous
Great.
system, exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to step back from that initial reaction and look at it and analyze the feelings you're having in your body and the thoughts you're having in your head, and saying like, hey, is this feeling thing, is that actually my gut feeling, or is that a separate entity? Is that fear or anxiety or whatever it is? Because it usually is, if it's something like that.
That's a great answer.
Yeah,
I've asked that
that's
question
really good.
quite a few times on this podcast, and I think that's my favorite
That's
answer.
the best answer as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's a phenomenal answer.
Absolutely.
Well, do
So-
you guys have? Yeah, go ahead.
Now, what are we doing now? How are so went through this complete tsunami of craziness.
Still going through it, I guess.
Still going through it right
Oh
now.
my gosh, yeah.
How does the business look now? And then I think that my follow-up question to that is, do you have an exit strategy for this as well?
Sure. Oh gosh. Okay. So I will say I feel like the last year and a half I've been so focused on like survival that I've not been performing at my best. Just fighting off lawsuits. I think I don't even know. It's like 5 or something going on right now.
Oh my gosh.
Well, here's the thing: is when
You bought a company, all these people put in money, and they're like,
they all
why
put
aren't
in
your
money,
projects
and
happening?
like,
So they're
"Where's
suing
my
you.
money?"
Yep,
and
absolutely.
5 of those people banded together and sued the dude and where he went and won and got their money back. A few of them decided to go after me because they thought I might have it, I guess. I don't know, which is just hilarious. But okay, so I've tried to explain this, we had the same conversation with everyone. Like, hey, by the way, this is what happened. Like, I don't have your money. Go after this guy. But people get emotional about their money, and some of them decided to go after me. One of those was handled. It was a small claims thing I didn't have to deal with, fortunately, after I got served. That was just forwarded to him, and he actually handled it, which was great. But I think there's 2 or 3 2 other deposit claims, and then 2 other claims about work. I think what it really was is these were 2 jobs where they were in punch lists, and we closed out the job, and they never paid us a dime. But we billed them for their final payment, which, we put in 3 times as much money fixing those jobs that we would have gotten from the final payment. And they turned around and gave me a lawsuit. I'm like,
Wow.
really? You bend over backwards to help someone, So that really sucked. That was a little bit of a hit on my faith in humanity. Just watching multiple people attack me, knowing the situation. But people will justify their feelings, and they'll justify their actions with whatever means necessary if they feel like they've been wronged. So that's an unfortunate truth. And that was hard. The first time I got served, I was like, how could this happen? I've done everything I can to help these people, and still really I'm getting sued. I just have to have faith that karma will work itself out. The truth will prevail. And ultimately, the one suit with the 2 people who were in punch list, and literally I don't even know what they're suing me for because they haven't paid me or anything. So they didn't do so well in the hearing that happened last month. So I don't know if that's going to actually continue on or what's going to happen there. But the judge was basically like, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. So that was really encouraging, at least. It's okay. At least no one's taking this seriously. I still have to pay legal bills for it though. So,
Jeez.
yeah. So aside from all that dreariness, Things are a lot better. I've like rebranded. I've like completely changed the business structure and the business model and how we do things, and been a lot more involved with like the operations of the company, which has really actually helped. I wish I'd been a little more involved from the beginning instead of just trying to fight lawsuits, I guess.
Yeah, you were dodging fiery arrows though.
Yeah,
I mean,
but really, I think like it would have if I had just been a little bit more like proactive with like coming in and cutting cords and not that, because that was really hard. Is like I didn't want to let people go, but I had to. I had to, and I let that go as long as possible. Every time I've had to do any layoffs is like. I don't want to let people go. Like I don't. And I've foregoed my own paycheck most of the time, to be honest, in order to make sure I could pay other people. And that is really probably not the best business strategy. I think if you're unable to pay yourself, you need to make some cuts with the payroll. But it's hard when you're looking at people and they have mouths to feed at home and they're relying on a paycheck, and it's hard to. Cause I know I can figure it out, right? But they're counting on you. So. That is that, but things are looking up now. We're like really finally operating at a place that feels sustainable and like we can grow and be a real company. Ultimately, I'd really like to franchise, to be honest. I think like I've put in a lot of work into like the systems and creating something that's like sustainable and flowing well. And so there's still a lot of kinks to work out, but that's kind of my goal in the next few years is to turn it into something that can be repeated over and over in multiple areas.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, that is wild. Like you said, I mean, you maybe even you maybe even gave too much grace. I don't even know if there's, there might be one person out of 10 and you're the one person who's going to take that on and turn it into something positive.
Still 1 out of 100.
Yeah, congratulations, because that's insane.
I look forward to the future Netflix documentary or the series. We really we have our cast all picked out. Like Kristen Stewart to play me, please.
That is hilarious.
Jennifer Coolidge, this is a call for you as well.
Well, I'm fascinated by franchises, so when you do end up going that direction, we are definitely going to have you back on the podcast, because we could go all into that today, but we probably don't have enough time.
I don't know anything about franchises yet, so I've got a lot of learning to do myself.
But that's pretty much the story of everything you've done, is you don't know anything about it when you get into it. You fell forward, you figure it out, and then you master it. And that to me is super impressive, and I'm super proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's typically worked out pretty well for me. This one's a bit of an exception, and unfortunately to quite a large scale, but it's going to work out. I'm quite confident in that. So,
I have a silly question. Mm-hmm. When you tell your friends and family about this, do they think you're crazy?
I think originally, yeah. It's such an unbelievable story. It's like, yeah, sure, you're full of it, And so originally when I was telling everyone what was happening, I was like, sure. And then as it goes on, and I've got, a lot of documentation to back everything up, and I've spent a lot of money on legal fees, and it's still ongoing, and, no one really doesn't believe me anymore unless they don't know me. But,
the unfortunate thing about this is, like, I come from a contracting background. Mm-hmm. None of what you said surprised me one bit.
And that's the thing.
Yeah. That's the unfortunate thing.
I know, exactly. Anyone who
we've heard this story so many times. We've gone in and fixed project of people who took 50% deposits up front and walked with the money. Like, nothing you said surprises me, which is unfortunate.
And I think, like, people hear horrible contractor stories, like, on a one-off event a lot of times, and it's like, it's terrible, but it's like one person or something, or like a couple people. In this case, it's like 25 people and millions of dollars.
Well, I think that would be why, maybe, a little piece for later, right? Is maybe if you're thinking like, the franchise piece, man, the world needs you. You know what I mean? Someone who you can hang your hat on the fact that you're going to do the job. You're not going to be spending their money on the next job or two jobs up. I mean, that's something that the world needs for sure.
Point.
And then for people in the Pacific Northwest, can you say your new name?
Yeah, we're the Kitchen and Bath Collective. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or anywhere on the internet, hopefully.
So if you need a trustworthy contractor, right? You heard the story. She's only going to do things the right way.
Yes, definitely. That's always been a huge priority.
Just another silly question, because silly questions are popping in my head. How did you come up with the name?
A lot of just thinking about it. I'm not great at names, to be honest, but we did a lot of workshopping. ChatGPT helped us out a lot.
That's right. That's right.
We were just going through this ourselves.
I actually really wanted the PNW Home Co., but there was like too many similar ones on the DOL, and they wouldn't let us have it. So I was like, fine, okay, whatever. So the Kitchen and Bath Collective.
Were you trying to show that that's your bread and butter, kitchen and baths?
Yeah, and that is. I should also mention this. We sell materials, cabinets, countertops, flooring. We're dealers for all that. So that, and then I do a lot of design work as well. So one of the things that like kind of sets us apart is I do like renderings, like high quality renderings and mood boards and stuff for clients to like really help them with their design. Then we have all the materials. So yeah.
And if we ever close on this Lake Taps house, if we ever get it under contract, it'll be a first-hand perspective of like kind of what her work looks like.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Thank you. If you do that one, it's gonna be awesome.
So what do you do with all your free time since you're not really that busy?
Yeah, since you don't do a whole lot, what do you do
like
for
go
fun?
Skiing,
You know, when you have 3 or 4 days
hiking,
available.
wakeboarding. I'm assuming all those things.
I do love to hike. I've spent a lot of time like sailboating and paddleboarding this summer. I don't do the sailing,
Nice.
but I sit on someone else's sailboat.
That's the way to do it, right?
Yeah, my kiddo and I like to go do stuff. I don't know. I like to bake. I like to cook. I love to cook actually. Like I'm pretty okay at it. Gosh, what else?
Do you do sourdough bread by any chance?
Do what?
Bake sourdough bread?
You know, I've made bread and it's usually pretty okay, but it's not my best thing.
I just started that venture and I'm really trying to figure out some.
Good for you. Sourdough's great. Yeah, I love that. I do paint by numbers stuff to relax sometimes, which is kind of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, kind of just grandma things. I rewatch shows I've already watched, like just to,
What's your favorite show to rewatch?
Psych.
Oh wow, okay.
Psych. Wow, that's a flashback. That is a
that's my favorite. I've watched
a great
it probably
one.
like 5 times through. Like no
I
joke.
love it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Sean.
Yeah, God, I love him.
That is a great show, man. It's been a
such a good
long
video.
time.
It's a
I was
great
obsessed with that show.
Yeah, me too. Me and my sister, it's like a thing. Oh, Nancy Drew PC games. That too.
Okay.
No way.
Yeah.
Gamer.
Yeah.
Love
No, just those ones. That's
Really?
it. Yeah, that's it. I don't play any other computer games or any sort of games except for those. Oh, murder mystery games. I love those too.
Nice.
Board games.
Like board games?
Yeah, they're like
Clue.
you get like letters and like you have to do
Yeah.
with a party of people. It's
And
like-
she's pretty badass at escape rooms.
Oh yeah, escape rooms. That's right. Yep. Karaoke. That's
Yeah, that
right.
doesn't surprise me. You seem
Yeah.
like a problem solver. And
Yeah.
I get stressed out in an escape room and I stop thinking logically and I just start like opening things and
Panicking.
they're like, "Sir, please stop pulling. It will open if it's supposed to
You
open."
can't kick
And I'm
down
like,
the wall, sir.
No, funny story about that. I know we're like out of time, but I did an escape room for my birthday once, and my sister brought a friend, and we're in the other, like it's like an open into second room, and we were in that room trying to figure out whatever puzzle, and then we hear like over the intercom, "Put the screwdriver down! You have to stop now!" And we like come running out. She's unscrewing this entire picture from the wall, like obviously not supposed to be off. It's like halfway up the wall.
She's like, "I'm thinking outside the box, dude."
No, we're done with this room.
There's a screwdriver here. This had screw. I don't know. It made sense.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, do you guys want to get into the final 4 questions?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you so much for your story.
Yeah,
That was
thank you.
incredible. Love it.
So my question is, this is only the second podcast we've done with these new 4 questions, so bear with me. My question is, of all the things that you do on a regular basis, whether it be daily, weekly, monthly, what do you find is the single activity that has the highest ROTI, return on time invested?
That's really good. I think whenever I have time and like the proper space to make myself just kind of sit and think about ideas like that.
I love
is
that
it.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I have that space and like dedicated time, it's like I come up with some great ideas to just like really push the needle forward.
That's awesome. That's
Do
a
you
great
like
answer.
put your phone away and just like spend like 20 minutes with no
Yeah,
distractions?
sometimes like I'll have to think about a topic or like have something that inspires me, like a video or something, and then I'll start just kind of riffing ideas. It's helpful for me to have someone else in the room too, just so I can like yell at
Sure.
them and they can be like, "Yeah, that's great," or "No, that's terrible."
We get that. That's what Andrew and I are to each other. We're very honest too. We'll be like, "That's stupid. Try again."
Yeah. Not great. Not great. Okay, so my question is, if given the chance to go back in time, what is one thing that you would change about your past? Either something maybe you did or something you
Like
didn't
my
do.
whole past.
Like one thing.
One thing.
Oh,
One
man.
thing that stands out to you. That doesn't have to be business related or real estate
Wow.
related.
You might have already told us. Not by this
where do I
business.
even start? I don't know if I could pick one. I mean, I'm grateful for the journey I've had because of like where I'm at now. I'm happy with everything, but like, wow, There's a lot I think I'd change about my young adulthood.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to reword that question because
Yeah.
I feel like maybe that's.
So choose one.
I think I'm gonna have to wrap that up with like being a little more discerning about who I trust. To be honest with you.
Yep.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's deep.
My question is, if you had the world stage, everybody in the entire world, 7 billion people paying attention to you, you had 5 minutes of their time, what would you say to them?
Wow. First of all, I'm already scared. That sounds horrible.
My hands are already
I'm
clamming.
not afraid of
I'm
public
getting
speaking,
sweaty.
but I would be there.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people, and granted, this is really first world because there's a lot of people in the world who are literally trying to survive, like on a physical level. And to those people, I don't know what I could possibly say because I don't know that experience at all. And that's just like, I can't even put my brain near that level of lifing. But to people who are able to survive and feed themselves and have shelter and the things that you need to like continue humaning, I'd say that a lot of people kind of sit and wait for life to happen, and there's just nothing good that comes out of waiting for life to happen to you. I think that you need to find things you like and do them. Like action is just one of those things that no one can do it for you. It's always going to be you who does that. And if you have the resources to, care about enjoying life at all, do it. Don't wait.
I love
That's
that.
beautiful.
Golly, great answer. Well, Kyle's not here today, but his question is: if you had 72 hours to give away $10 million, how would you, or what would you do with it?
That's great.
Sorry, Kyle, I butchered that.
72 hours to give away 10 million?
Yeah.
I'd probably put a lot of money into like stopping sex trafficking, like human trafficking in general, to be honest. I'd put a lot of money into like animal welfare. 10 million isn't even like enough to touch on a lot of the things I'd love to change about the world. The adoption and like the foster system and like the way like unwanted children and adopted children like that is just awful.
It's gross.
Yeah, it's really bad. So there's a lot I would do with that. That's probably where I'd start.
Great answers, all four. That's awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
love it.
Well, last but not least, can you tell everybody how they can find out more about you and your company?
Sure.
And hire your company if
Yeah,
they're looking for that.
please.
Yeah.
Kitchenbathcollective.com, also on Instagram, or you can find me on Instagram, Briana Nasman. If I remember that correctly. Yep, that's it.
Awesome. Well, this has been a total pleasure. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Briana.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's been real.
If you like what you heard, check us out at the, oh my gosh, I just butchered it. I was going to say the Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hey, this is only our second
Yeah, it's the second
podcast
one.
with the new branding, so bear with us, guys.
Check us out at the Entrepreneur Fellowship, as well as check us out on YouTube. See y'all next time.